Hello, my name is Etchi. I am recording this video on Pokemon Gen 4 RNG manipulation for speedrunning. So that's Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, HeartGold, and SoulSilver. Now what the heck is this video? Basically the goal of this video is just to get you started with Gen 4 Pokemon speedrunning if you wanted to do runs with RNG manipulation. I'm only going to be teaching you just the bare minimum of what you need to know to get started and succeed, so I'm also going to go over how to practice it as well. I'm going to do a demo of all the concepts that I am going to explain in this, and I'm also going to kind of just show every little thing and talk through my thought process while we do that. This video is not explaining how to make your own RNG manips, and it's also not going to explain every detail about how RNG manipulation works. I don't even go over all the different types of RNG manipulation or RNG in the game. I'm just going over, again, what you need to get started and succeed in a Gen 4 speedrun. So what is RNG, first of all? RNG stands for Random Number Generator. So in the context of video gaming, it's basically the thing that decides the outcome of all the random events in the game, quote-unquote random. So if you think about Pokemon, you can think about things like critical hits, whether you see a shiny Pokemon, whether you get a random encounter, all that stuff is decided by RNG. So therefore, RNG manipulation is the trying to manipulate the outcomes from the RNG system. So in the context of Pokemon speedrunning, that can be things like manipulating encounters or manipulating specific stats or whatever. And we're going to go over that in more detail later. But more kind of low-level explanation is that in the context of Pokemon speedrunning, RNG manipulation is hitting a frame-perfect manip in order to hit an initial RNG seed, and then doing very precise inputs for however long you need to in order to continuously manipulate those outcomes. So when I say inputs, I mean things like perfect movement, but it's a little bit flexible sometimes, or mashing through cutscenes in specific ways. And why do we use this in speedruns? For several reasons. Consistency is really, really important. For already RNG-filled speedrun, anything we can do to reduce randomness is just going to save us a lot of headache and time. And then it's straight up faster in some cases. So while it is nice to cut out any unwanted encounters, because any random encounter was going to lose you like maybe 12-15 seconds, some things that you can RNG manipulate just straight up save time. So things like Pokerus, which just makes your Pokemon literally faster and stronger, can save you multiple turns throughout the course of the run. So yeah, I talked about this a little bit, but I'm just going to kind of break down a bunch of ways that RNG manipulation is commonly used in Gen 4 speedruns. So like I mentioned, you can manipulate stats with it, so you can get a guaranteed God starter. So think like near 31 IVs in every stat, the perfect nature. In the case of Diamond Pearl, you can also want to pay attention to the hidden power type and damage that it does. So you can manipulate all that, and it's fantastic for consistency. You can manipulate no unwanted random encounters, and on the flip side of that, you can also manipulate specific encounters. So that'll be things like manipulating a Bidoof catch to teach it 4 HMs, manipulating a Starly for your fly Pokemon. You can also do things like manipulating a Kricketot or a Chansey with a 5% held item. So in the case of Chansey, that's a Lucky Egg. And then you can take that item from them. And again, normally it's super rare to even encounter a Chansey, let alone one that is holding a Lucky Egg. So the fact that you can do that is really good. Or you can even do it to specifically encounter a main switch Pokemon. So in the case of HeartGold SoulSilver, you can manipulate a Raikou that you switch to. Pokerus, I kind of mentioned a little bit, but for those who don't know what Pokerus is, it's a 1 in 21,000 chance of happening after a battle normally, and it literally doubles your EV gain. And that's really, really good in the context of speedruns because, especially for speed checks. So in the case of Piplup for Platinum speedruns, if you do the Piplup route, Pokerus is really clutch for helping you get over a few speed barriers because all the extra speed EVs really, really add up. You can also help with guaranteed spinner passes. Normally in a Gen 4 Pokemon speedrun, we do have many tricks to get past spinners safely, but sometimes they troll you a bit and make you wait for like 20 seconds before they let you pass, whereas if you carry RNG Manip far enough, you can actually just walk right past them. And simultaneously, as you keep this RNG Manip going, you can also use less repels, which means less menus, which means time save. And then one of the kind of quirkier cases is for HeartGold SoulSilver. You can manipulate the casino replacement game Voltorb Flip to be completely predictable, and that allows you to get a lot of rewards and get some pretty nice things for the run. So tools required for getting started in practice and doing these Gen 4 runs. You're going to want a Windows program called Run as Date. I'll have links for all these below in the description, by the way. Run as Date, you can think of it basically as a program that you use to point to other programs to act as if you're running them at a very specific system time. So if I wanted to run a program at specifically November 12th, 2072 at 3:15 a.m., then Run as Date can do that for me. And I can also create a shortcut with that, so it's really easy to set up in the future. You're going to want Desmume, specifically version 0.9.11. Desmume is a DS emulator, and it's important to use this one because it has Lua script support. Lua script is basically a program that we're going to inject into the game while we're playing it, and it allows us to read values from the game in real time and even adjust them in real time, and that's really powerful for RNG manipulation because we can just straight up read our RNG seed at any given point in time and change it as we want to. So there's a link below for the RNG manipulation Lua script, or the RNG specific Lua script, but there's many other Lua scripts you could use for any speedrunning reasons for Gen 4. You're also going to want Flow Timer. Flow Timer is basically a metronome program that'll allow you to easily time your inputs for these frame perfect manips that I mentioned earlier. So you literally just give it a countdown time, and then as it approaches 0, it'll start giving you audio cues, and that'll help you time your A press or A presses. And then if you do plan on running on emulator, you're also going to want to download MelonDS. MelonDS is another DS emulator, but it does not have Lua script support, which is why you can't really use it for practice in the way I'm going to show you. However, it is a more accurate emulator, and it is getting more and more support, so I would recommend doing runs on that. It will save you a lot of headache, but for practice, I would recommend using Desmume. So Battle RNG versus Primary RNG. There's actually like several different RNGs that it'll go on at any different point in the run, and I'm just going to talk about Battle RNG briefly because the common response to me explaining the RNG stuff is, why don't you manipulate the battles to go really well? And it's a bit more complicated than that, and in the context of a normal Pokemon speedrun for any % glitchless runs, you don't really need to know about Battle RNG, at least for the purpose of getting started. So I'll just briefly explain what Battle RNG is. Battle RNG is what dictates what happens in a battle, basically. Again, it's supposed to be random, and you can technically control it in some games. If you're a task, you can control it in Diamond Pearl. It's basically uncontrollable in Diamond Pearl because, unlike Platinum and HeartGold SoulSilver, your RNG seed will move every single frame while you're in battle, including frames where it lags. So you can't really control that, and that means you'll see it when I do the demo, but the RNG display goes absolutely nuts when you're in a battle in Diamond Pearl. It just moves so fast if you want to see how quickly it moves. But in HeartGold, SoulSilver, and Plat, the initial seed is determined by the time you enter the battle, or the frame you enter the battle. And you can potentially manipulate fights like that. And then this is also separate from primary RNG, so that's why we're not going to worry about it too much and talk about it too much. But you can see in the bottom of this slide, there's an actual RNG seed. That's what it looks like. It's just 8 characters, hex. Don't worry too much about like how it increments or how it decrements or anything. You just need to know that's what it looks like. So, primary RNG, we're going to start diving into the nitty-gritty details here. Our primary RNG does not advance when you're in an area with no moving NPCs, so this can be like the house at the very start of Diamond and Pearl. It also does not advance when you're in a normal cutscene or talking to NPCs. Note that I said normal there, I'll explain that later. But basically, if I just walk up to any NPC and just start talking to them just by pressing A, then that immediately freezes RNG and nothing is going to happen while I'm talking to that NPC. As long as there are not weird things going on, but again, I'll go over that later. If you are in a menu, any menu, then RNG will not advance. So if I press X to flash the menu, that'll freeze it. If I go into my bag, if I check my trainer ID, anything like that, that'll all freeze it. And then if you're in battle, so the main reason I bring this up is don't worry about like taking too long in battle messing up your RNG, because that will not impact it as long as you follow the movement correctly for what you're trying to do. That's all that matters. You can take, most of the time, you can take like a bunch of time in battle. You can have a really bad fight and still carry Manip totally fine. As long as you don't spend like hours and hours in the battle, you should be totally okay. And then when does it actually advance? There's a lot of times that advances, it turns out. So if you're in an area with NPCs that are moving, then RNG will advance every time an NPC does any kind of movement. And note that I say when you're in an area and not just when an NPC is on screen, because if the NPC is loaded in at all, even if you can't see them, then they can actually advance RNG. And I'm not going to go too in depth on like how load lines work or how NPCs get loaded in, but you just need to be aware of that, and you can always play with the Lua script to see where NPCs are getting loaded in and go from there. Every time you take 128 steps, you will your RNG is going to advance, and how much it advances is actually a function of your party size. So that's why it's really important to actually catch Pokemon you try to RNG manipulate. So if you're trying to manipulate a Bidoof as part of, like, say the Pokemon Platinum RNG manip for glitchless 90%, then it's really important that you actually catch it, because when you do hit that 128th step, whenever you do, then the RNG Manip is expecting you to actually have that Bidoof in your party. So if you accidentally killed it with a crit, then Manip's basically dead. Every time you get an encounter, it's going to advance RNG by some random amount based on the actual Pokemon. So it's consistent depending on the encounter, but you just need to know it's going to advance by a pretty large amount usually. If you idle at the intro screen, that'll advance RNG. So when I say intro screen, I mean like literally when you start up the game and it shows like Pokemon Diamond or Pokemon Platinum or whatever and the legendary Pokemon. Just always mash A there and you won't have any issues. And then anytime you're mashing through a cutscene that takes place right after a battle in an area where NPCs are loaded, which is a very complicated statement. Let me just like break that down. So I mentioned earlier that if you talk to an NPC, then it freezes RNG. However, there are times where you fight an NPC, so say Rival 1 in Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, then as soon as you finish fighting them, they still talk to you and you're in a cutscene, but it doesn't actually lock the NPCs from moving that are loaded in. So what happens is while you're mashing, the NPCs that are loaded in are actually still moving and turning and doing whatever. So anytime there's a cutscene that takes place right after a battle in an area with NPCs, you always want to mash very quickly. I don't think there's any places where it's possible to mash too quickly unless the RNG Manip is routed kind of weirdly. But if you end up having issues with getting specific encounters or not getting what you want RNG-wise after something like that, or especially one of the big ones is the catch tutorial, then it's probably because you didn't mash fast enough, so just be aware of that. And then there's also other ways, but they're not really too relevant for normal speedruns. So examples of that would be like specific Pokéetch apps can actually advance RNG, interacting with a Chatot can advance RNG, slathering honey on a tree, stuff like that. Don't really have to worry about that, but the 5 bullets I mentioned here are the most important things you have to be aware of. Alright, so that was a lot of information. I'm going to break down everything I just talked about in a demo video where I am going to basically just walk through the first chunk of the Diamond Pearl any percent glitch speedrun and explain the concepts as we go. And the reason why I'm demoing this run is because I think this is legitimately the best run to start with if you wanted to get into Gen 4 RNG manipulation Pokemon speedrunning. And the reason for that is, one, it's short. It's about an hour long, which is really, really nice compared to the 4-hour long gauntlets that are Gen 4 glitchless runs. You only need Manip up to the starter to actually finish the run. So if you just want to do an RNG manipulated Pokemon speedrun, then you just need to do Manip for 5 minutes. And it's not that hard, honestly. There's the movement for that first 5 minutes is super simple. Anyone could do it. And it would probably take you like 5 minutes to learn. There's only one required glitch in the entire run that is very easy to execute. There's a harder version, but I do an easier version. And you can actually just watch any of my PV VODs for an example of how to do that. And I'll link that as well. And then it's basically as Manip heavy as you want it to be. So you can extend it for those 5 minutes, like I said, for your starter. or you can actually manipulate the full way all the way through Eterna Forest for like 40 minutes. And that just means that because you can manipulate for as long as you're willing to, you can always just keep extending it as you get better and better at RNG Manip. And the nice thing is that all these ideas apply across all Gen 4 games. So this is a really short and easy way just to get started and see if you like it, see if you are comfortable with doing the RNG manipulation and you want to actually put yourself through the 4-hour gauntlet that is the normal glitchless 90% runs. So we're going to go switch over to that now. Alright, so here's our demo. I'm going to start here with run as date. I'm going to inject the date and time used at the start of the Diamond Pearl 90% run. As I mentioned before, I already have Desmume set up. I have a ROM for Diamond and Pearl. It doesn't matter which one you use, by the way. I don't think I mentioned it, but Diamond and Pearl are the exact same for this run. It does not matter which one you use or which one you have. And all I'll do is just point it to my Desmume EXE and then set the time here, and then make sure this box is checked. These other two don't matter, and you're going to press run. The only thing I want to mention here too is that if you ever run into issues with your RNG manip and it looks like you're doing everything correctly, make sure you're on the right date, and then make sure your time is at least like approximately correct. Don't worry about like, oh, the tutorial video has, you know, finishing this fight at 3:22 a.m. or whatever. Like, that doesn't matter. As long as your time is approximately correct, you are totally fine. So don't worry about it too much. But if you do end up having some weird issues, especially with the runs where you're manipulating specific encounters, then check to make sure the time is correct. See, I'm going to press run here. I'm going to exit out of run as date now. So here's Desmume. I'm going to go to File, Recent ROM, open up my Pearl copy. You would just go to Open ROM if you don't already have that. I'm going to load up a specific save state that is already at the start of the house, the starter house of the run. So all you have to do to get here is just match the tutorial, pick Dawn, and name everyone one character, and then you're good. It doesn't really, you don't have to set up anything beyond that. Just get to this point of the run. I'm going to go to Tools on the top part, go down to Lua Scripting, and then open the specific Lua script that I downloaded, the Pearl Plat RNG v21.lua. So when I open it, I'm going to get this display on my bottom screen, and I inflated it a little bit on the right side so you can see things clearly. I'm going to go over it in detail right now. So, as you can see on the right side, there's a huge grid. You basically don't have to worry about that for the purposes of doing this. It's more useful when you're trying to map out an RNG manip. You don't really need to know how it works for just copying an RNG manip. You can see your current RNG seed. So in this case, it's 1B, 6B, 7B, 7F. And then it shows you your next RNG seed. It shows you your current step count as a function of 128. So again, once you hit 128, it just automatically goes to 0, and your RNG will advance appropriately, as I mentioned in the video. And then this is showing your distance from the starter seed. So if you look at the top window, you can see that I've actually set my seed to 1B, 6B, blah, blah. And the way you set this seed is, if you notice when you loaded the Lua script, it actually opened another window where it shows the Lua script and it says you can stop, restart, or edit it. If you click edit, it'll actually open up in your default text editor of choice the actual program, and I'm going to show that right now. If I do, maybe if I do this, I thought I had it set up at one point. Let me see. There it is. Hello. So yeah, for me, it opens up in Visual Studio Code, and you can actually set the initial RNG seed right here by just replacing this. So go ahead and replace it with the RNG seed I have on screen right now, the 1B, 6B, 7B, 7F. Make sure that's saved. And when you save it, it actually refreshes the entire thing. So I'm going to exit out of that. And now that we're in the game, what you're going to do is whenever you want to inject whatever seed is written in that Lua script file, you just press 5 on your keyboard. So I don't know if numpad works. I don't have a numpad. But if you press 5, it'll actually specifically inject that seed. So I can actually show this by doing two other things. So if you want to increment your RNG, you can press 2, If you want to decrement, you can press 1. So if I just decrement a bunch of times and then press 5, it actually sets us right back to 1B, 6B. So that's basically all you need to really know about the Lua script. Just those 3 buttons and what to look for. And just what you're going to do throughout, kind of as you practice and learn in RNG Manip, is you want to make sure that your step count is aligning at the right spots and your current RNG is aligning at the right spots as you try to copy the movement. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this. I'm going to set my options. And I'm going to start doing the movement. Now your movements in the house, and any of these houses where there's no moving NPCs, doesn't actually matter. As long as you don't take as long as you don't take any extra steps, so your step count's correct, then you are fine. And then my movement path out here is going to be fairly specific. It's actually pretty loose. It doesn't have to be perfect because of the way that all the NPCs are loaded in basically in this area, so it doesn't really matter too much. But that's the path I always take. So I'm going to mash through this berry cutscene. And again, we're in this house, and as you can see, no NPCs are moving, and as a result, the RNG is not moving. So you can see the current RNG is not moving in any way right now. I'm going to go ahead and leave the house. It's actually very common to like bonk here. Bonking doesn't matter, and turn framing here doesn't advance my RNG either. You can see my step counter is not changing as I do this. So in an area where there's no NPCs and you're not in the grass or like in a cave, you can do whatever you want as long as you don't mess up your step count. This movement path is also very specific. I'm going to go up here, up, and just hold up until I trigger the berry cutscene. For this specific berry cutscene, all I'm going to do is, as it starts finishing, I'm going to hold up. I'm going to mash B there, and then turn left right there. That movement path is very specific because, as you saw, my RNG was advancing due to an NPC that was off-screen but loaded in. And then we're going to trigger the late cutscene. Again, this is a fixed cutscene. There's no actual movement. It's just mashing through. So I'm going to actually speed through all this. Our RNG is locked, which means our starter is actually already locked. Which starter we're going to get, or which stats we're going to get on our starter already determined. I'm going to pick Chimchar. And you'll know if you got the correct Chimchar because it'll be a female Starly, a female Chimchar with 20 HP. Can mash through this again. Even though this is after a battle, there are no moving NPCs, so RNG actually doesn't advance. I can mash through that slowly if I want to. Here, there's no NPCs, so I'm actually going to take a second. If you look at the bottom of your screen, or on the right side of my screen if you're just following the demo, you can see my step count is currently at 124. I can show you what happens. Take a look at the RNG and my step count as I do this. So 1 step, 2 step, it's 127, and 0. So RNG advanced, and I only have 1 Pokemon in my party, so it didn't do more advances than normal, but that's how much it would advance for just 1 Pokemon. And again, I can just stay still here because there are no moving NPCs. So we're going to just go ahead and trigger this next cutscene. Again, I can just mash through this, so I'm going to speed up here. This also triggers another cutscene right after it. And then here's actually something that's really important to know. It doesn't matter in this specific spot, but I need to bring it up now. So if you notice this text box right here has a little arrow on the bottom right. Not all text boxes do. So if I press B here, this text box is not. And what that means is whenever you see a text box like this, as long as it's not one that's after shopping, you can actually cancel this text box with a D-pad movement. So if I press it down right now, that actually clears the text box. And more importantly, what that does is that also gives me a turn. So if I press down like that, I turn at the same time as I clear the text box. Otherwise, what would normally happen is I press B and then I press down, and then as I try to run down, I actually do an additional like turning animation, and then I start running. And that's really important to know because a lot of the time in these RNG manips, they're actually very time sensitive because of the NPCs in the moving areas, or the moving NPCs in the areas. So you really have to pay attention to whether or not you're supposed to turn frame out of text boxes or not in those areas. So you're actually going to see it in Jubilife. It's really, really important in this run to D-pad out of all the clown text boxes, because otherwise it could cause issues. And you'll actually also notice it in Orberg and the text box as you're doing a little cutscene where the dude walks you to the gym. But that's that. I'm going to run down now. This movement's a little funky. I do one left movement, one right movement, and then once I enter this route, I do another left movement, and then I take this path. Those left and right little jukes, they aren't super precise. Again, just the way the NPCs are loaded in. You don't actually have to do it on the exact same tile every time. It just needs to be approximate. And if you're ever unsure, like when things are supposed to be precise and when they aren't actually super precise, the answer is just test it and find out. Just experiment with it, because that's the best way to learn. So this is all cutscene. I'm going to skip through this, give my Chimchar one character nickname, skip through all this as well. And then I'm actually going to slow down here. And I actually can know if I'm on the correct seed here, because the lady's going to turn up as I start running down, which is exactly what happened. So you generally want to have a good idea of like what NPCs are doing at any given point in the run, just so you can kind of tell if you're doing things correctly. But generally in early game, you can know if you're on the right seed by just your random encounters, if you got one or not. So here we got to enter the mart. I'm going to buy stuff. I'm just going to hold it the whole time. You can actually see that turning animation I was talking about earlier, because we were just turning from standstill. Going to buy some stuff. And then as I leave the shop, the way I always do it is I wait until this one, and then I press B and down basically at the same time. And then as the store closes, 2 tiles down, left, take this path. There's actually quite a few visual cues from the NPCs there if you are ever unsure. One of the cool ones is like one of the ladies will run away from you the moment you approach them. So it's really easy to tell, and the visual looks kind of funny. I'm gonna skip through this cutscene as well. Again, no moving NPCs, and this is a normal cutscene, so it wouldn't even matter if there was. Alright, so that's that. I'm gonna slow down again. And again, so if you were doing practice here, right, and something went wrong as you were approaching here, you could just fix your RNG seed by injecting the current seed that I'm on right here as you're in the same spot, and make sure your step counter is the same, and then just continue the RNG as normal. It's really useful to set up a lot of save states while you're doing this, so I could set up save state right here. And then the save state also captures my RNG, so I can just reload the save state and practice this segment of movement over and over again until I get it down. So this movement path is actually super straightforward. Just all the way up, right? And then I take the 4th tile of grass here, up to the tree, and then we're out. And then here's the first battle after a cutscene where the mashing is actually going to matter. So I enter this very specifically. By the way, random diamond pearl trick, always mash in battles before, like between selecting a move and your opponent taking damage or you taking damage, because it goes faster. So that's why I was mashing there. So I'm going to slow down here. I'm actually going to make a save state just to kind of demonstrate things if needed. So yeah, because this is a cutscene after a battle, and there are moving NPCs in the area, it's actually important to mash quickly here. If you mash too slow, you will get an encounter when you don't want to, and getting an encounter just immediately kills the RNG minute. And then this movement's super funky. Definitely requires some practice. I actually did a turn frame there, so let me see. That's what happens. That movement's a little funky for me on emulator, but Alright, so here I'm actually going to lower the game speed a bit, and that'll help me actually mash fast enough here. I don't really have a problem with this on console, but on emulator it's a bit finicky because my controller kind of sucks. Like even at reduced speed I still can't clear these text boxes perfectly. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it does need to be pretty fast. Alright, so I'm actually going to make another save state there, just in case. Oh, actually I need to speed up. So I'm going to load that save. Do this specific movement. 4th tile, go. And that's pretty much all I wanted to show with the RNG demo. I think I kind of went over all the concepts that we mentioned in the video or in the presentation kind of before this. What's gonna follow this video is, don't kill me, okay, is basically a couple other videos. So I'm gonna have one video for showing how to hit the initial RNG seed on emulator. And what I mean by that is, so when we go back to the actual start of this, which is here, like I said, we actually just injected this RNG, but you need to actually hit this naturally on a run, whether you're playing on emulator or on console. If you want it to be valid, you can't just inject the seed willy-nilly. And I'm going to show you how to do that with Flow Timer and doing it on emulator or on console, so either DS or 3DS. So I have 2 different videos for those. One of those is for DS and 3DS, one of those is for emulator. And then the last video here is actually just me doing a full demo of the entire RNG minute from start to finish, all the way extended all the way through Eterna Forest. So that'll be kind of a reference video for you to learn off of and check whenever you have any issues or while you're practicing. So that's it for this one. Thanks again for watching. Hope it was helpful, and definitely check out the other videos in this playlist. I hope this video has helped make Gen 4 speedrunning less intimidating. It's always kind of been really scary for new runners because the RNG minute can be a lot to take in, but I've hopefully explained everything you need to really know in 30 minutes, approximately 30 minutes, so hopefully that helps. Thanks again for watching.